right. Bring some energy out. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. If you haven't purchased the book already, shame on you. You can still remedy the situation by purchasing at the front counter. And we're going to be doing this interview style. It's a conversation with Ed Hardy. And once you have purchased the book and the event is concluded, we're going to do a Q&A, and then we're going to go into the back and do a little signing. How does that sound? Yeah. Perfect.
So we're combining really fast.
Yeah.
That's right, they're going to buy it very fast. It's going to be going like hotcakes. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Ed Hardy and Joel Selvin.
Thank you. I am Joel Selvin. This is Ed Hardy. And I'm the happy co-author that got the opportunity to get Ed to tell his story for a book. I don't know how I got to be so lucky, but I am very grateful, and I'm really glad to be here tonight with Ed and all of you. Thank you all for coming. So Ed, should we just pass this thing back and forth, or you want me to handle it like the TV announcer? I will do that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, you're the pro. You know how to do
So I bet you remember the first tattoo you ever saw.
Yeah, actually it was on my best friend's dad, and he'd been in World War II and had several tattoos, and somehow it got our attention. I was at age 10, I'd known Lenny for several years, and just thought, this is incredible. It's really, you know, I was drawing, and I thought, what a great way to draw. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen, so that started it out.
You started giving tattoos to the kids too, right?
Yeah, I started drawing tattoos on neighborhood kids, and figured out that Maybelline eyeliner was the perfect thing for outlines because it had a little greasy effect to it. You would stay on the skin, and found these colored pencils that you could dip in water, Mongol, paint with pencils, and they would turn into, you know, like a watercolor on the skin, and did very credible work. And we'd take the bus. I was raised in Corona Del Mar down in Newport. Take the bus up to the Pike in Long Beach and look at tattoo shops, and I do drawings off the walls, and I set up a little toy tattoo shop in my mom's house. That was 1955.
Tell us about that Pike in 1955.
Well, that was just before Disneyland opened. I think Disneyland opened in either 56 or 57, the first theme park, and the Pike was like Coney Island West, scary, of course totally attractive, freak shows, bars, you know, a lot of hardcore, crazy, dangerous ways to have fun, and completely alluring to young people and you know, young formative minds. So it was great. There were 6 tattoo shops there. It was like in heaven. One guy let us into the shop because you were supposed to be 18 to come in, but old Bert Grimm didn't mind us hanging around, and it had a great influence on my life.
The whole Southern California thing in the late 50s was happening right on the beaches in front of you. How, did that play a part in your education as an artist?
Yeah, I think it was really formative. I was really fortunate in retrospect growing up down here during that period, because all the surfing started, rock and roll started, custom cars started, all that stuff influenced me. We had a great beach at Corona Del Mar, and in the summer a lot of people would come down from LA with really great cars. All the customs and hot rods and paint jobs were going on. I eventually segued into drawing kind of monster art that Ed Roth and some other Von Dutch people like that were doing when I phased out of my tattoo thing. I was obsessed with tattooing for about 3 years, but I was too young to learn to tattoo, and I went into hot rod art, and then became really obsessed with surfing. But it was a great period, and then a little bit beyond that, I got into the art culture here. When I was about 16, 1961, 62, I was obsessed with coming up to see galleries in La Cienega, and that was my real, you know, aesthetic education came in there. And beat literature, coffee houses, you know, started finding Burroughs, Kerouac, all those guys. It was a rich time.
That's part of what was going on in California at the time, was that kind of fluid culture between high art and low art and popular culture.
Yeah, I mean, that had a definite influence because I respected high art and I'm big on art history and all that, but there was so much snobbery with the art establishment back east, where everybody's looking toward Europe with their backs to the rest of the country, and where we were looking out at the Pacific and looking toward Asia, and just out, you know, in the sun having a good time and digging things that occurred to us that were homegrown. And I think obviously what California birthed in those days obviously had an enormous global impact. It's really, and it's amazing looking back at it. I think, wow, I was kind of at ground zero of everything, where, you know, as an observer and sometime participant.
California, home of everything from Mickey Mouse to the Hells Angels. Of course, you wound up getting a degree at the San Francisco Art Institute and turning down a fellowship at Yale to study as an engraver to become a tattoo artist. How did you reconnect with tattoos?
Well, a buddy of mine that I'd actually gone through grade school with, and I handpicked a little tattoo on him when we were in the 8th grade. He showed up at an art opening at the Art Institute, a student show, in his sailor blues, and wow, Don, I got tattoos. Remember tattoos? I was like, yeah. And and that night we all thought it was a good idea to pile in a car and go over to Oakland. There were a bunch of tattoo shops there. Got my first tattoo, and next night I went back to another shop and got a tattoo from a different guy. And then the third night I found this person, Phil Sparrow, who was the first renegade intellectual I encountered in the business. He'd been part of Kinsey's circle. He was part of Gertrude Stein's circle pre-war. Deep intellectual guy who escaped academia to begin tattooing. And the first day in his shop, he showed me a book of photos of Japanese tattooing. And as much as I dug classic Americana stuff that I've been, exposed to, when I saw that, I was already pretty, sophisticated in the art thing. And when I saw those giant Japanese tattoos, I thought, well, if they can do that, then I can do that, man. I've got thumbs and fingers, and I was into Asian art anyway. That's it tilted the scales, and I thought I could always go back to graduate school, but I think this is a good idea to try this because nobody was doing anything like that in the West. So that was a couple of people. Sailor Jerry was doing a little bit, but it was a wide open thing. Tattooing was wide open, and I went into it. Was glad I did. I got to work for myself and built it into something that I guess is what it is today.
I love it when you say that you realized that it was a medium with some potential.
Yeah.
So tell us about Sailor Jerry.
Yeah, Sailor Jerry was really, actually when I asked Phil, and somebody must be doing really terrific tattoos, because Phil just did very pedestrian things, and and he said, well, Sailor Jerry in Honolulu is sort of the leader. In those days there was no communication, there were barely photos if you knew somebody that maybe had a photo that was lucky enough to correspond with a tattooer doing work. There was a little bit of a global network, but it was super, super underground. And so I eventually ramped into finding a guy that actually on the Pike at the old Burt Grimm shop, started getting my work down there from this guy, Hong Kong Tom. He'd worked with Jerry out in Hawaii for a while. And so I got a connection to Jerry with another guy that had worked with Zeke Owen, a great renegade, crazy tattooer, a lot of stories about Zeke in the book. And started writing to Jerry, and finally he wrote me back, and we traded photos and immediately hit it off, caught off like fire, because we both were on the same radical bent of kind of deep tattoo philosophy and dreams and wishful thinking, and mainly trying to really expand the palette and expand the artistry and take it somewhere else. And Jerry was a hardcore old school tattooer, but he was a deep, intellectual guy and a wild card. So it was wonderful. The last 4 years he was alive, we had a really profound correspondence. I visited him a few times, and he connected me with Japan, introduced me through the mail to a Japanese tattooer that was corresponding with people. And that led to me being able to move to Japan and tattoo in that environment for about 6 months in 1973.
Tell us about that.
Well, I had this whole romantic thing about Japan because I'd been introduced to it sort of through beat literature and interested in Taoism and Buddhism and Japanese aesthetics and woodblock prints and all that and what you call like high culture thing. But I just dug it as a wild, culture, because a lot of the great culture in Japan came from street stuff too, kabuki and all kinds of things like that, and tattooing, which was huge in mid-19th century there. And so I was really studying up, and my big dream, go to Japan. And then I got over there, this guy said, you can move over. I shut my shop in San Diego, moved over there, and then realized as soon as I got there, I was, abysmally ill-equipped to deal with it. I'd be taking a few little language lessons, and you're dropped in. I saw no other Western people the period I was there. And it was pretty much Yakuza culture. A lot of the clients were, from the gang culture, and they were all really respectful, but it was, it was just a different thing. So I learned a lot by the immersion, by the osmosis of it, which my teacher, that Horihide there, said, you just have to come to Japan, because I'd ask him endless questions in letters about really arcane things and elements of the culture and the spirit, right? And he just kept saying, you have to come here and see the dark places. And I did get to do that. So it was, finally at the end of it, things were turning a little bad. In the summer, the cops always made a sweep. No, it was already by then, it was getting toward the fall. And they would make a sweep, and a lot of the Yakuza would split. A lot of them would go back to Korea, because a lot of Yakuza there are Korean originally. And business was kind of drying up, and by that time, Francesca, my love of my life, was there with me. She and I had connected up in San Diego. It's a whole great convoluted story that's in the book. And then she vanished from left San Diego, came back, and I'd left my first wife, and asked her to come join me in Japan. So we were over there, and I finally thought, I could just tattoo hoods anywhere. I can hang out with low-life people. I don't have to be on the other side of the world to do this. And because most of those guys were not into like cultural nuances, they wanted to see if I could buy them a 45. They wanted to see one gang boss wanted me to buy him a Mustang. He says, "I'll give you the money. You just get the car. You drive around here for a few weeks and then hand the car to me." I was like, and I was kind of, making polite excuses, like, it's kind of like getting invited to the Hells Angel Bash. It's like, I'd love to come, but I'm busy that night. So it was really, it was phenomenal. And then when I came back, I'm the first, Western guy to ever do that. And when I got back, the word got out in the tattoo grapevine. I already had a reputation. I was tattooing a fair amount of tattooers when I was in San Diego, along with the servicemen. And I was doing custom work on businessmen, people, with money and taste and some aesthetics that were coming a great distance to come and get custom tattoos from me, and they had to keep them all hidden. It was so not a cool thing to do, But I came back, and then it was all out, like, wow, Ed Hardy went to Japan, and people started coming down and talking to me. I went back to work in the Penny Arcade booth that Zeke was running, and, from the high to the low, I suddenly, I came back broke and thought, it's the last time I go broke in this business. But I tattooed enough, a few months in San Diego, and got a little bankroll, and Francesca and I came to San Francisco. I opened a private appointment-only studio, kind of hidden away, one-of-a-kind tattoos, and that's what turned it around to where you could do commissions. People could come in and ask for something rather than pick it out off the wall. That was a big, big change in '74, and from there I started doing a lot of work and taking a lot of pictures, and it just went on from there. So it's been a great ride.
Realistic Tattoo, this place that Ed opened, was a real turning point in the whole history of modern tattoos, it turns out. Tell us about a couple of the big tattoos you were doing back then. You were doing some really fantastic things.
Yeah, I had people coming out that had interesting ideas on their own. It wasn't just for Asian work, which is what was my taste, but the guy we called the Squid Man, he was a physician from down here in LA somewhere, and he met me before I went to Japan, and he was obsessed with getting some really unique thing, and he didn't know what to get. So I came back, called him, I said, okay, I'm back, and he decided he wanted to get a squid that took up his whole body, down just above the elbow, so he could wash off when he had to scrub in the, for the operating room. But it went down onto his feet, and so the body was on the back, and kind of encircled his whole body. I think it was the biggest single image in the world. It wasn't solid tattooing, it had some waves around it, but it was pretty impressive. He'd come up along with his boyfriend who had other existing tattoos, and I started covering him with really elaborate Japanese stuff. And this was early '70s, and they'd come up all in their like twin outfits. It was a big deal in the Castro thing. The twin effect. I saw a graffiti in the Castro in those days. It said "mirror fuck," and I figured out that it was like a lot of that thing, like let's be twinsies, but we're sex partners. It was pretty crazy. And they'd come up and get tattooed and take acid and go to the baths, and it was a real lively time. It was before the plague hit, But that was a Squid Man. Charlie Lazier, who was a big businessman from St. Louis. I think he owned a bank and had all kinds of companies. And he had some tattoos from. He worked as a carny early in life. I think he was from money, but he went out and had got a little rough street education. He found out about me and came out, and he'd been was in love with anything that moved: bicycles, motorcycles, cars, planes. And he made set a record crossing the English Channel in a hot air balloon, and he wanted to get a hot air balloon on his back. So he sent me the menu from the Concorde, which is how he traveled back and forth to Europe, and there was a 18th century engraving of this Montgolfier brothers balloon moored in a courtyard, a big blue thing with all this French stuff on it. And so I put it on his back and tipped it up in the sky, and I had little tiny portraits of these guys in powdered wigs, like looking down for landscape. But those big pieces, because people traveled a long distance, I do them in a week. And I learned from Sailor Jerry, who had pioneered this thing of doing sectional tattoos, like a jigsaw puzzle. because the few big pieces Jerry got to do in his life were on people, not servicemen, there were people that came in to get tattooed and could do it in a few days. So he'd finish the section and then link up another section the next day because the skin's too tender. You can't do it like a painting. Here's the outline, here's some shading, come back tomorrow. So that's how I did these. The big balloon I did in 5 days. I think I did the big center balloon thing in maybe 4 or 5 hours. I tattooed pretty fast, so I learned to just get in. And tattooing sailors and Marines, you know, thousands of them in San Diego, build up my efficiency with it.
So, yeah, the American military base tattoo style, you were moving into the Japanese style, and then at the Reno Convention, which is pretty much the first tattoo convention, 1977,
Yes.
you met good time Charlie Cartwright.
Yeah, Mike Malone and I had a booth there at the Reno show, and we were showing off a lot of big work and different work we were doing. Michael inherited Sailor Jerry's shop because Jerry died when I was in Japan. So we came in there, and these guys walked through with a whole crew of people. They were from East LA, and they just had the craziest tattooing. They had all this super fine line stuff, photorealist stuff, monochromatic, this black and gray tattooing. And we'd seen bits and pieces of it, but it was usually, you had to go to jail to get that kind of work. People weren't doing it in a commercial context. Nobody was interested in or capable of offering it as an alternate style. And there's an enormous interest in it among a lot of the population. Well, Charlie was really into it. Charlie came out of just a Baptist, like Kansas thing. He's just a white guy from Kansas. Jack was raised with his adopted, and his father was Chicano. And he was raised in the whole Vato scene and knew how to gang ride and all that, and the lowrider culture. Well, Charlie opened this shop. They decided to open a shop in East LA where nobody had tattooed, right on Whittier Boulevard. And they offered other things, but mainly they were offering that look in a commercial context. And when they came to that convention, everybody was mind blown. We were like, it was something so new. And immediately, we hit it all off. We were talking about that, and they went, yeah, come down and check it out. I flew down here. Got a tattoo. I came down with Bob Roberts, who was living in LA then. He was tattooing at Cliff Ravens right near here on the Sunset Strip. And we both got tattoos. I urged Bob to come up and work with me. And I opened a shop in San Francisco in the Mission District, called it Tattoo City, and tried to put that whole template of that kind of work and that whole Cholo LA feel. And people would come into that shop and they saw the way we decorated out the windows, and you guys are from LA, and we said, no, well, we're from here, but we're doing this work. And a few months after that, Charlie got a sort of crisis of faith and decided he was going to quit tattooing. And to preserve the style, I had a little money left from my mom's inheritance, and so I bought the business, and then we got run out of it because I didn't have the sense. It didn't even have a lease. It was a rented place. I was running pretty fast and loose in those days. Bought this business. Oh, we're set. All right, cool. And then a month later, Jack calls and goes, oh man, the shop got bought out from under us. There's this thug tattooer that used to control things here, and Captain Jim. So he bought the shop. I went down the street and bought this little tiny cottage-style building. It had been a real estate office in the 1930s, this Hansel and Gretel architecture. You see that around here a lot, like LA architecture that has a little cool, cute, it's like some off a little movie set, you know, a little troll house with peaks. And it had become a car lot, and I got that, named it Tattoo Land, and put a big banner up, painted it bright yellow, and got some people in there, Jack, and we'd recruited already Freddie Negrete, who'd come around looking for a job. He was just a fledgling tattooer who'd done a lot of time in YA and different places, and was doing great work. So, and that became the nucleus of like the black and gray tattooing and fine line tattooing. And I just thought it was such a great style, and I knew it needed a platform. For all this stuff, you have to be in the right place at the right time. It's not like having the money to, I'm an artist, I got some money, I'll buy some brushes, I'll buy some canvas. You have to magnetize people in to get what you're interested in doing, you know. And that's what I did with Realistic. I knew I could do that in LA or New York or Frisco, and it worked. So the East LA thing, it really grew. And there's a wonderful documentary out now called Tattoo Nation, and it's showing around, and I don't know if it's on Netflix, but it's around as a DVD, and it documents that whole story. And it's very, very cool. On the subject of tattoo movies too, Joel approached me with the idea for this book because my good friend Emiko Omori, a great documentary filmmaker in San Francisco, I've known since the early days. I did a big Japanese back piece on her. She's Japanese descent from SoCal. she made a movie, it came out about 3 years ago, called Ed Hardy Tattoo the World, and that is on Netflix, and the DVD has also got a lot of extras about stuff. Joel came out of a film festival seeing that thing, and we'd known each other, and he walked out and said, well, you've had a crazy life, man, we could do a great book. So now we have the book, and it's got many stories. It does.
Yeah. You know, you guys don't care about the T-shirts.
Yeah, right. No, everybody knows.
No,
part of
I'm
that.
looking at those. These good. These
But-
don't
but
care about the
no,
T-shirts.
these are
We were in the
hardcore.
radio station over in Pasadena. Ed's doing an interview, and the intern comes in, and she looks at the guy. She goes, "Oh, she's doing an interview now. Who's she interviewing?" I said, "Well, that's Ed Hardy, because the designer." Well, come on. If you've got your books, Ed came down here
Any
specifically.
questions?
Oh,
Yeah,
those are good questions.
Good
Answer it.
questions.
I got
Yeah.
a question. I get some fine line prison work right here.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
This is fine line prison work right here. You can look at it later if you want. But I get a relative question. It's like you said, you used to have to hide your tattoos, and it was kind of like you see somebody with tattoos, it kind of was like a little camaraderie thing, because you really went through the pain and everything else.
Yeah.
Today's tattoos is kind of like, they're using aesthetic stuff so it don't hurt. It's just becoming like
Yeah.
a cool thing, like it's a hipster thing now. Like
Mhm.
how do you look at that and say like, what happened to that real tattoo culture?
No, I
How do
don't
you
care. For me,
appreciate
it wasn't. I mean, if you got them, if you wear it, you went through getting it, and I mean, it is. I mean, there's parts of it's a rite of passage, and for a lot of people, it's a thing like, okay, I did this, and I think a lot of tattoos, they're like memory markers of our journey in life. That's what Lyle Tuttle always said. Lyle's a great historian and storyteller, and they're just. And I always think of them as almost like when I was a kid, they used to have stickers that you put on your car window, like I've been to Wyoming, in your wind wing, and that's what. And I came back from Japan. I was so happy to be back, and Zeke had a design sheet up with like designs for almost all the states, for all these homesick servicemen who come in and they get Utah on them. So he had a really cool design. It's like the Santa Monica skyline and a palm tree, and it says California. I got that on the back of my arm, and it's just they're whatever they are. I'm happy to see the people that want tattoos, get them and have them done really well, because the artistry and the intelligence and the general level of it has gone up, and some of it gets crazy. Some people, there are a lot of tattooers, a lot of them gotten like rock stars, a lot of them have attitudes, a lot of them think that they're God's gift to mankind, and they get on this ego thing, and that's unfortunate, but people are people. But it just, overall, the quality has gone up so high. My standard line is, I don't know why people get tattoos. I don't care if people have tattoos, but I got into it thinking, this is stupid and not right if people get demonized because they want to do this. In the 60s, we were fighting for just recognition and acceptance on all kinds of levels. If we're not hurting you directly, then leave us the fuck alone, And so that's what it is. It's just, and it's completely unbelievable, the volume of it, and the work. And I don't even begin to follow it. I go to like one convention a year up by San Francisco airport, and I see people come in from around the world, and the quality of the work and all the books on it and the information. And it's like a dream come true, because I believed in this thing, and I never thought it would get this big, but I wanted it to be better. And now it's over the top, and so I felt good. I stopped tattooing about 5 years ago. I have a shop, Tattoo City in San Francisco. My son Doug helps run. He's been tattooing 21 years, and 3 other people. They're all doing brilliant work. And it's just like, that's what you do with anything. You wanna honor the people that taught you and gave you something. That's the only way I got all this, is people that mentored me and put up with me and helped me a little bit. And then you want to pass it on, and that's happening now. Any questions? Anybody else?
Come on, that's it, huh?
Yeah, I got one here.
You mentioned Von Dutch and Big Daddy Roth. Do you have any stories about those guys?
Well, actually, I never knew Dutch. I knew all about him because Von Dutch was so famous that for a period of time there, about 57 and 58, his name was like a synonym for pinstriping. They would call it, that car's been Dutched, It was like he was so important, and of course he was such a wild card and a loose cannon. The stories were unbelievable. A lot of them true, I think. I met Ed Roth. I watched Ed. They would come into those shows. I actually went to a great car show. The one I remember the most, it was right at some big pavilion next to the Pike in Long Beach. And Roth was there with his Pache airbrush, and they would have sweatshirts. It wasn't even t-shirt culture then. People wore sweatshirts with cut-off sleeves and that to the beach. They had them all sprayed with random patterns in Dayglow colors. In the mid-50s, Dayglow was big. It came in, people had Dayglow socks, pink and, chartreuse and all that. they'd have an abstract pattern of color, and he worked just with black ink, and he just freehand that stuff out. Some guy come in and he'd want a monster, you know, driving a 55 Chevy, and they would just detail it out. He and Kid Jeff was one of the great painters. Dean Jeffries just died recently. He was a fantastic painter. He was under the moniker Kid Jeff. He's pretty young, great striper. I never saw him in action, but I would follow all this in the Hot Rod magazines. And those people, actually, Roth, soon after that, I got into things. I got an airbrush and I started painting some shirts. I was trying to figure out a way, anything, I thought if I could make money drawing, because it's all I knew how to do, it's all I wanted to do, but if I could free myself up, then cool. And I sold it, I airbrushed a bunch of shirts one summer, wear them down to the beach and take orders. And then I asked Roth, I guess I was at one of the shows, and he didn't know how old I was. I was either like 13, I was 13, I think. I think he thought I was older because Lenny and I go there and we're like, oh, Marlboros and, you know, jelly rolls and everything. And I said, well, do you ever hire people? And he said, well, yeah, I hire people and sometimes. And I got his card, and he was up in like Bell Gardens or something. And I got my mom to drive me up there with my stuff. And she drove us in, and there's all these guys hanging out, and I thought, over my head. He was so gracious, because when he saw me, this kid with his mom drives him up, and he said, I thought you were about 16, and he says, you know, and I somehow had a fantasy I could take orders and paint him down at my mom's house and bring him up there. But he was really a cool guy, man, and it was when things were, he was still, you know, it was pre-Mormon days, and my friend Robert Williams has really a lot of Roth stories, because he worked with that, you know, but it was a big cultural thing. It was just such a shock to see those beautiful cars, and it was really amazing. It was really fresh, and the Barris brothers, and it was a pretty magic time. And it's great that that's all been, you know, saved and remembered, and of course the car culture is enormous now, and it's all tied in with the tattoo culture. There's going to be a great show at the Huntington Beach Arts Center in mid-July. It goes for a couple of months, called Custom Culture 2 with K's. The guys that started Juxtapose magazine did it at the Laguna Museum about 15 years ago, and this is an updated version. I'm going to have some work in there, and a lot of car stuff. A lot of Japanese stripers are coming, so it's good. It's all this is alive, and different generations are picking up on it, and it's art from the heart. It's like our street, you know, things that we believe in. It isn't something that's loaded on us and say you have to become, you know, sophisticated. You have to do this. We do become sophisticated, but it comes from the soul. You know, it's really good. Anybody else? Yeah.
I was just wondering, have you ever turned down, obscene requests or tattoos and, you know, private parts?
Oh yeah. I never tattooed genitals, and I used to turn down, not a lot, because most of the sailors are pretty, that was what I built a lot of my business on, but, you know, I tattooed bikers and stuff. I was tattooing some angels down in San Diego, and I had a lot of good customers that were angels in the Bay Area, but they were getting, you know, really esoteric tattoos. But yeah, I wouldn't tattoo racist shit on people or swastikas or anything like that. Somebody the other day was asking me, I was being interviewed on the radio, and they went, oh, you want to compromise your art? And I said, well, it's a moral issue, come on, you know, so, you know, it's, you just have to, and then you have to save some people from themselves, like, that's not really a good idea. Or the psychological thing of, like, dealing with drugs, you know, all right, I'm ready, you go, great, man. The sterilizer will be done in 2 hours. Sit down, you know, 2 hours. Which is why it's useful to not be the only tattoo shop in a town, because then another shop, especially if they're a little lower level, they can be your trash can. You can send all the troublemakers down there. You know? So it's all that street stuff that was really fun to learn, and as survival you had to learn it. But I was very fortunate. I never got in a beef in a tattoo shop. I'm not like, you know, a fighting guy or anything. You just had to really work with people and do it that way. But a lot of people, you know, I used to see sailors, and they'd come in, and I know this is true because they serve beer in the shops in Hong Kong, free beer. And they come in and say, yeah, I woke up on the ship in the morning. I thought, why is my arm sore? They didn't even remember that. They were blacked out, you know, and had something put on them. It's like, oh. But after all the stuff you can say about it, all the great philosophy and discussions and weighty measures, and at bottom line, I mean, they're tattoos, you know. And they're here for now. That's it, you know. So. All right. Well, we'll sign books if anybody wants to get books.
Thank you.